After 3 years of work, our follow-up to the Meat Eater Fish and Game Cookbook is here. It's the Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, campfire, and camp stove. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside. From grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Get your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com or buy it wherever books are sold.
It just looks like someone's false cast went way wrong, and this poor little child has a clouser just planted like in her tiny skull.
Probably 14 inches. I mean, look at the size of his hand. Unless Screech here's got bigger mitts than I think he does.
He had a razor blade earring, was about 280 pounds of thundering lard, and wore a showstopper mullet that reached past the numbers on the back of his jersey.
I'd say once it got to like within 150 yards, we kind of hit the oh shit button. Like, oh, that boat is coming right at us.
Good morning, degenerate anglers, and welcome to Bent, the fishing podcast that spent $2,000 on a 1987 Bayliner with a non-functional inboard-outboard and made priority number 1 covering it in $10,000 worth of custom sea deck. I'm Joe Cermelli, and joining me today as my guest co-host is a man that needs little introduction. He's confident. He exudes street smarts. His boat is wrapped. He is Captain Ross Robertson. What's going on, Ross?
I'm here. You know that wrapped boat thing and sea deck and all that? That's quite the thing now. I don't know if it means anything, but...
Do you have sea deck on your rig? I don't recall.
I do not. I've got, my factory floor is rubber. That's probably better for me.
Because it seems like you would have the sea deck with the big water fishing carved into it. Like I see that on every boat now, like junkers. They have all the sea deck. So their feet are comfy, but the thing barely runs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you know, it seems like pretty good stuff. I got some buddies that like it. You know, I mean, of course, the self-promotion, I'd love to have the Big Water logo on the floor, but, you know, I get rid of these boats so quickly that I don't know that I want that run around the block.
I know. Speaking of boats that you've gotten rid of, I really hope all you guys saw the final episode of Das Boat Northeast, because Ross and I fished together in that one, and it was hands down my favorite of the season. In fact, a lot of people reached out with kind words and sort of agree with that, and I'll tell you why. So, like, you and I have known each other for so long that we can break each other's balls and it's natural. It's almost like if we're not saying offensive shit to one another, someone must not be feeling well or something, you know?
Yeah, you know, I had some people on my mom's Facebook of all things. It's like, man, you guys really ribbed people. My mom sent me this thing. It's always a great thing. Yeah. And I was like, you know, but honestly, it's the truest form of a compliment, really, because they're like, you know, I always tell people, if you're in the boat and as a guide, you know, I see this. When like 2 guys who were like college roommates and they don't speak for 7 hours in the boat, I think it's weird.
I've said it a million times. I break your balls because I love you. If I'm not making fun of you, I probably don't like you, you know?
Yeah, I if the ribbing doesn't happen to a certain extent, now maybe sometimes we take it to a little bit of an extent.
It's been known to happen.
But yeah, I don't really trust the guy that doesn't bust some balls in the on the lake.
No, for sure, man. And I'll tell you what, that shoot was a lot of hard work. People don't understand the hard work behind the scenes on that. But I had fun. And I had fun on all the shoots I was part of this season. But like, if you look at episode 1 with Ryan Callahan, like, I love old Cal. Cal's the man. Super fun dude to hang out with. But I don't know Cal the way I know you. Like, I can't commission a line of custom fly dubbing and name one after Cal, whereas you I can, which is why the black dubbing in the Bent dubbing series was named Ross Robertson's Soul, because I've peered into your soul over the years. Like, I know it's genuinely that dark. And I sent you a pack of that, by the way. Any plans for that? You going to make something or just cherish that or what?
Ironically, I was over in one of the islands eating dinner, and this guy came over and he recognized from my fishing stuff, and he was like, "Hey, are you really that guy? Like, what do you got going on?" So he wanted a business card, so I go to pull out of my pocket, and I just had that. You had just sent it to me. True story. And he tried taking it. He walked off with it. I literally got up and I was like, "Yo, bro, no, there's only one of those in existence."
There's more. There's like 3 or 4, but regardless. So get this, right? I had one dude reach out after I posted all those dubbings on Instagram, and he was like, "I was really hoping when I first saw them they were merkins." Do you know what I mean? Do you know what a merkin is?
It sounds like some type of gang hit.
No, far from it. It's a pubic wig, and I figure, well, hell, if they were merkins, I couldn't have sent you the black one. I would have had to send you the orange one, because you're a ginger.
We've all seen them on the playground, at the store, walking on the streets. They creep us out and make us feel sick to our stomachs. I'm talking, of course, about ginger kids.
When I was young and I started doing this, they called me the kid. Now I feel like the old man because I'm not up on all these terms. Like, there was one a guy hit me with the other day, and he's asking me because his kid started calling him something. I'm like, I'm not familiar with that one. I'm usually pretty in the know, but I think we're getting older.
I think merkin's actually a very old term, but we're getting way off topic with that and your body hair. More importantly, you got to tell me what you've been up to, man. So I know, like, right now in the fall, this is your busy season on the walleye front. In fact, we're recording this not at 10 p.m. because you had a rare day off today, which I know doesn't happen very much this time of year. But the way I look at it, like, if anyone wants to know about your walleye skills, they can just watch Das Boat or the many videos we've done together in the past. I want to talk a little bit about your recent southern jaunt. You put Ohio in the rear view for a bit and got a little saltier than you just naturally are.
Well, if anybody has ever watched any of our stuff, we've actually done some things together with Old Country Steve, me and you. He's been my camera boat driver.
Old Country Steve was there for Das Boat. He was a camera boat guy, and boy, was he extra salty. Anyway.
He is more salty than, I don't even know that little brand with the umbrella that sells salt. But the long and the short is he's been my good friend and helped me with the business end of things for a long time, and a camera boat driver, what have you. But he's got a place down there in the bayou, and every now and then we try to sneak away, and we didn't have time, so we just made some.
Right.
And we got some bull reds, had some in the mid 30s. We did a little bit of, got into some lane snapper one day. We just kind of go down there and do a half a day of this, half a day of that, and just try to kind of explore with no agenda.
Yeah. And when you say down there, his place is like way down near Venice, Louisiana, right? Way down on the tip of the Delta there.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say the next town because there is no such thing as.
Well, I know, but it's my point. It's one of my favorite places on Earth.
He's maybe 5 or 10 minutes from Venice Marina there.
Okay, yeah. So basically, all he has access to is, I think there's a Dollar General there and maybe a gas station. I don't know. It's been a while since I've been down there.
Not to digress too much, but we went to a place called Happy something. It's like the Happy Store. Something. It's anyway, please let us know what the real name of this. But anyway, you go to this place and they sell pizza and groceries in the front, and in the back it is this killer hardware. I'm not kidding you. They had $1 million worth of stainless steel nuts and bolts and clevises. You name it, you could have built a boat from this place. And everything. Now I needed some 5-minute epoxy to take care of some stuff down there, and they of course were out of that. But the only thing I can tell you is you're not happy when you leave. You're happy when you finally actually have what you need in the middle of nowhere. But I paid like $10 for super glue. This is no joke. For a little tiny tubes.
You get that far down the Delta, you may as well be in Hawaii or Alaska, man. The only way it's getting there is by a long haul truck all the way down. So I'm not surprised by that. And it's the only game in town. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, those little tackle stores, they are very proud of their stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, so I saw you guys had some giant bulls there. I was super hella jealous because honestly, man, I haven't caught a bull like those, sadly, since I was in Pensacola, Florida with you shooting a video years ago, and it was one of the most insane topwater bites ever, just walls of copper charging ahead to mow down a huge tuna popper. And my favorite part of that was an old Hook Shots video. My favorite part of that video was that for your sit-down interviews, I insisted that you wear a hat we found in Walmart that just said, "Get over yourself." Do you still have that hat?
You coaxed me into it, but the thing with me is there's no shame. Like, I was like, absolutely, I'll do that.
No, I don't recall it that way because you had sponsor obligations, but I'll let it slide. It was a
No,
fight.
we made a side agreement, which we're sure as hell not going to talk about here. And I was like, no problem, dude. This is because I think it's funny. So I'm always down for a good ribbing and having some fun, whether it's at my expense or yours or somebody else's. But if you remember, we were planning on wearing that hat, like Where's Waldo, and just having it show up randomly.
Yes.
And somehow it was lost. And I actually attempted to find another one. I can promise you Pensacola Walmart had the last one because I couldn't find it.
There must be a hot item down there. That's a shame you lost the hat. It was a great hat. But look, man, speaking of getting over yourself, let's roll into some Nibbles and Sips, our new segment where the Bent Legions can have their voices heard, because we've got a question today that I'm curious to hear Ross Robertson's take on.
I just called to say
it is a new era of loneliness. Oh, God.
So I just want to say I've got some really fun and funny voice memos from you guys in the pipeline that you're going to hear in future shows. But today's comes from my bud Tyler Winter out in Minnesota, and I chose it simply because I think it's a solid question for me and Ross DeFarius here to answer and sort of kick around. But Tyler is an environmental scientist. And Tyler, I got to be straight, bro. Like, you kind of deliver this like the guy that raised his hand in the audience of a lecture. Okay, I'm just saying. So here's Tyler's question.
Hey, Joe. It's Tyler here with a Nibble and Sips for you. I've noticed a certain animosity between boat and bank anglers. Just wondering, in your opinion, how far boats should stay away from people who are fishing from the shore? Let me know what you think.
So it's a fair question, and as you'll soon learn, there's another reason why I chose it. But I get the sense that Tyler is asking it partially because I know he's a big-time bank fisherman and has probably been crowded by a boat or two. But I don't know, man. Like, my gut reaction answer is you should be nowhere near a bank angler ever because, you know, like, you have a boat and he doesn't. And even if you were headed to a particular bank, like that's where you were dying to fish, if dude's there fishing from shore, sorry, you leave. Like, it sucks, but you leave. And at minimum, like bare minimum, you should be well out of casting distance. But even that's probably too close.
Immediately, this brought up like two things. And I think it goes back to a life thing to me. Whenever you're in a group, you know what I mean? You're like, yeah, we're right. It doesn't matter. Forget fishing for a second.
For sure.
And I can remember as a young kid, had no boat. I mean, young kid, not old enough to drive. My grandpa used to drive me up in the fall, and I'd fish off these piers in southern Michigan, which is like right near my house where I grew up there. And when guys would come in small boats, you were like, what the hell, bro? You got the whole Lake Erie, and you got to be up on this pier, and there's like no one else, you know, for miles. And then, you know, we started wading in it, and then that pissed off the boat guys and, you know, the shore guys. So we tried to go away a little bit. But then when you catch fish and they're not, and then I think of just like every day when I drive on the place I live here on the lake down in Port Clinton, there's a little culvert, and it's really easy to access. And I know you know right where this is at.
Yep.
There's always a pile of guys there. But the funny thing is you will see these like $100,000 bass boats roll in there dirty, and they are fishing this culvert, which is like, you have literally the entire Lake Erie and just tens of miles of all this stuff. And it's like, dude, those things, that's the most pressure on the entire lake. And these dudes want to fish that. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, the problem, of course, right, is that this is also very situational. Like, as an example, this is a constant fight between wading anglers and those on drift boats. Like, on a smaller river, even though you have a boat, it can be very difficult to keep your distance or simply move along because in some cases, and I'm thinking of like the eastern salmon rivers here, the fish are mostly where the bank anglers are. Like, there might not be any between where those guys are and the next group of guys are. On a lake or larger river where you have room to roam, different story. But I've been the victim of this both ways. I've been crowded out by drift boats while steelhead and trout fishing, and I've been yelled at while rowing, even though I thought I gave dudes plenty of room. But I think Tyler is definitely speaking more to these larger bodies of water. And I remember years ago I was walleye fishing, of all things, on Lake McConaughey in Nebraska. And I remember our guide saying that during the spawn, when the walleyes hug the dam, it's straight war between boaters and the shore guys because the boaters want to troll in super tight to the wall. He's like, they want their crankbaits like bouncing off the wall. And it creates like absolute chaos. And I know situations like that exist throughout the country. Like, other than this culvert, like, do you deal with any of that in the walleye scene in particular in the Great Lakes?
As a kid, again, fishing in the Maumee River, it's damn near knee deep and there's a few holes. It kind of reminds me of a very non-walleye situation.
Right.
And there's a handful of guys that try to come out there in little boats and everything. But, I mean, you literally it's a prop buster. So that kind of, but I would say just night fishing. Our peers out here, especially now because they got this $250,000 big fish tournament going on in the fall over like 50, 60 days or something.
Right.
So night fishing would be the only time that we have this kind of warfare deal. And we still have it out in boats too. I mean, the sportsmanship in fishing is absolutely shit now. It's almost a joke.
Yeah.
And see, here's the thing that I think. So let's say you're drifting, right? Like, this is not my deal and I don't care, but let's say you're in your drift boat and you're going on a 5-10 mile drift. And there are dudes that are randomly fishing from shore, and you make an effort to get out of their way, but the river is only so damn big.
Right.
Like, in my scenario where I think it's just asshole city is because we're talking about, like, the Great Lakes. Like, you can go somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
And these dudes will see, especially because we do a lot of filming, and when you see a light come on at night, like, guys are like, A, he's got a fish on. B, I need to be there. And they will dive bomb you. I mean, the stories I could tell you about people dive bombing when we were filming is insane. Like, in the middle of nowhere in Lake Erie, and a boat will see a light come on, and they will drive wide open and drive on top of you in 5-6 feet of water. I mean, the safety alone.
Well, safety is the thing, right? To that end, the nastiest dust-up I've ever seen between shore and boat anglers was actually out in Montauk, New York, many years ago, and we were chasing these striper schools around. And mind you, we're not talking about big ones, like 20, 30-pounders. We're talking about these dinky little schoolies. And they pushed in super tight to the beach. And most boats, ours included, was like, hell no. Like, we're not going in that close to chase these little rats. The waves were just too big. It was too shallow. But there's always going to be that one guy, right? He's always there. And this dude went for it. The surf casters were going absolutely ballistic. And sure enough, he got side two and almost got rolled. And we thought for sure that boat was going to end up on the beach. And he had a kid on the boat, which was even scarier. And they barely made it out. Like, we were certain that this wasn't going to end well. I mean, they were just straight vertical, jumping, breaking waves. Just stupid. And for what? Like, for 2 more schoolie stripers and everyone else is catching.
Actually, I've got a quick funny story. So we're out in the middle of nowhere in Lake Erie, which obviously, as you know, I try to do.
Yeah.
And you've been with me, and if they've watched Das Boat, you're pulling these planer boards 50, 75 feet out to each side. And I had this boat zoom in, and he kept getting so close. I'm like, what's this guy doing? Like, does he need help? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden, he rolls in next to me, and I thought he was DNR or something at that point, like undercover. And I'm like, but I know a lot of those guys, so I'm like, probably not it. And, this guy is inside of my boards, probably 20 feet off my boat. Like, I could have straight underhanded a Snickers bar to him, right?
Right.
and I look at the guy, and I'm like, and you know how, like, again, I mean, business end of things, wrap the boat as you joke. I'm kind of like, dude, you okay? What's up, man? Seriously? And the guy was like, hey, I watch all your stuff. I've always wanted to fish against you. And he starts letting out lines.
Against you. Fished against you. Not with you, against you.
He starts letting out lines that are literally, I said, dude, you're literally letting out your stuff on top of my lines. Like, what do you do? I said, if you want to have a tournament with me, like, sign up for a tournament. I'm like, dude, I got a couple people out here that are paying, this is their paid day. This is a guide trip, dude.
Yeah.
And my clients, thankfully, I had kind of the right dudes. I can't say exactly what they did, but let's just say that guy kind of probably didn't have the rest of the tournament he wanted.
Yeah, so. Okay. Well, we'll save that for a Smooth Moves later, or maybe an off-the-record Smooth Moves over Four Loko or something.
Yeah, Four Loko, people seem to love that. But, just the gall of people with, again, you're arguing like, hey, did I get out of this guy's way enough? I'm in a river where I had no choice. Like, here's this guy purposely driving on top of you. And I think that, unfortunately, everyone doesn't want to hear the reality, but reality is that is becoming more and more prevalent. It just is.
Yeah, sadly it is. Anyway, I appreciate the question, Tyler, though I'm not entirely sure there's a solid answer here. But I almost feel like it's less about figuring out the rules and putting rules on these things and more about being, just like a decent human being, even though, sometimes we don't feel like it. I can't stand, people that choose to ride bikes on windy ass country roads with no shoulder, but like, he's on a bike and I'm in a car, so I have to take the high road. I want the side view to just like kiss his elbow a little bit, but that's too risky,
Wow.
Anyway, please keep those voice memos coming. You can send them to bent@themeateater.com or to me over DM on Instagram. That's fine too. I have some solid ones, like I mentioned, in the chamber ready for future shows, and all those people will get swagged out when their soundbite airs. If you want to get swagged out when your soundbite airs, first you have to just go ahead and send a voice memo. So as soon as we roll into this week's Smooth Moves, you will understand even more why I chose Tyler's question for Nibbles and Sips. So I got to ask you, Ross, what's the closest you've ever come to being hit by another boat, whether bodily or like your boat being crashed into?
What is 0 feet for 1,000, Alex? Detroit River doing a promotional stuff with some companies I work with. And you know how like you're running the motor and you're trying to stay vertical up there?
Yeah.
And so the guys were behind there and this dude kept rolling over on us. Now, granted, you do have to fish those little seams and stuff a little bit, but the Detroit River, like, you know, I mean, it's big. And one of the guys netted a fish and he's got his rod and the boat came so close that he actually broke my guy's rod.
Oh my God. So anyway, okay, that's good. But this story in Smooth Moves, it will make you pucker. And if you're still wondering how close is too close for a boat to be to a shorebound angler, my good friend and artist Mike Sudol is about to tell you.
Why did you do that? Why? Why did you do that, Terry? Oh my God.
Joining us for Smooth Moves today, one of my old good buddies, artist Mike Sudol is here. What's going on, Mikey?
Nothing much, pal. Thanks for having me.
Mikey and I are doing some fishing together later this fall, which I'm looking forward to because I haven't seen you in person since last winter. Tog fishing for B-Side when we filmed that.
Yeah, that's right, man.
Those of you unfamiliar with Mike, I've been making Mike draw me shit for years now. I'm just like, I need this. I'm going to call Mike. But Mike did draw our fish eating fish logo that's on all our fish eating fish sweatshirts and T-shirts and things in the Meat Eater store. With among many other things. What are you working on now? Your full-time job is not fishiness, but you're always working on something fishy. Like, what are you working on right now?
I got some sneaky stuff coming up that I can't talk about yet, but.
What do you mean you can't talk? It's fishy stuff you can't talk about?
Well, you know, TBD. But on the easel right now, I got a nice big Patagonia brown I'm painting for a client, and it's
nice.
It's a horse, man. It's a big fish.
How is it living vicariously through clients? Like, you've never been to Patagonia and caught that, but you have to draw it for that man.
You know what? It's a lot of Googling. People don't realize, you know, you could just take the photo and draw the fish, but you know, I got to learn about it. So I got to look up, you know, is that fish unique? You know, what's going on with the anatomy? You know, there's certain spots, certain way, you know, so It's kind of fun. It makes you really want to get there and see it in person.
Well, you've definitely piqued my interest with this super secret fish project right now, but we'll talk about that later. But we've been fishing together for a lot of years. You've fished a lot of places, as have I. Yeah. But you're a Northeast guy like me, and I remember hearing hints of the story that you're going to tell today. And it's a good one. And because you draw fish, I'm calling you industry. Smooth Moves is usually like all industry dudes. You're industry. You draw fish for a lot of people, so you qualify. And this is one that'll make your butthole pucker. So take us back to that night. Tell us where you were, what you were doing, and what the hell happened.
You got it. So yeah, this is going back a few years. I'm fishing the bay side of Sandy Hook.
North Jersey. Yep,
North Jersey. And I was with a guy from Brooklyn, actually, a guy named Mike. Which
it's a lot of Mikes in Brooklyn. I've heard.
He never fished with me again after this night. This is the first time we fished together. He wanted to check out Jersey, and I had some fish dialed in on the backside. So there was this long sandbar, and it's not a spot burn. I mean, my God, this is going back.
Sandy Hook is not a spot burn. Like the tip of Sandy Hook, every surf fisherman on the East Coast knows about that.
Hey, man, look at a map, and you're going to you know what I'm talking about. But there's a long sandbar juts out into Sandy Hook Bay, and we're out there. It's probably 1 a.m. in the morning, and these fish are holding this rip. You got to walk out pretty far to the end of this sandbar, but there's usually some fish out there, and there's you know how it is in the middle of the night. It's super calm, flat, dark. You could hear things miles away, and the occasional boat you hear, you know, they're going up and down the Navesink.
Just so we know, what time of year is this? Because it's striper season, but what month was it?
This was the fall.
Okay, so still a fair amount of boat traffic. I'm saying it wasn't like late season December.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But 1 a.m. you don't get too many boats.
Sure. Yes, usually.
So we're out there for probably a good hour, casting away, not catching anything, and you hear a boat, one of the few boats you hear of that night, buzzing, and just kind of randomly, Mike says to me, "Dude, is that boat coming towards us?" And I look out, it's pretty far away. You can kind of see its running lights. I'm like, no, it's gonna cut, go up to the Navesink River, probably into one of the harbors or marinas, and we're casting. So again, the boat just keeps getting louder and louder, and I'm looking, and then again, this guy Mike's like, "Dude, I think that boat's coming towards us." I'm like, "It's impossible. There's land behind us on a sandbar." But as I'm watching the boat, it's coming close, full out. It's not
wide open.
It's going
right.
wide open. So I'd say once it got to like within 150 yards, we kind of hit the oh shit button. Like, oh, that boat is coming right at us.
Yeah.
So we turn and try to run up the sandbar against the tide to get back to the beach.
Not easy to do.
Easy. And the whole time we're running, I'm watching the boat, and the boat's turning towards us as we're going up the sandbar. So it's following us full out, wide open. So at the very last moment, the boat's probably 20, 15 yards from us. I just decided, well, I'm on the outside of the bar. He's inside of me. Instead of us falling, I'm going to turn. I'm doubling back. So I turned and I ran back down the bar, back offshore.
Yeah.
I figured I'll let the boat choose. Who's he going to get, me or him? He's got to pick one of us. So as I turned, the boat shot right between us, over the sandbar, and right up the beach.
Yeah, so it split you guys.
It split us.
And how far apart were you and Mike?
We were. I mean, when we were running up the bar, I could hit him with my rod. We were that close. So when I turned,
dude.
it was. So the guy. I mean, I hear girls scream. The boat hits the sand. I hear the guy hit it in reverse and just wide open hit it. Hit the throttle.
Yeah.
Jumps off the back of the boat with the throttle going and is trying to pull the boat into the water.
He's trying to pull it backwards with the prop spinning in the sand.
Spinning. Yeah. So they were talking, the boat's on the beach, but the prop's in maybe like 3 feet of water.
Okay, right. It's a deep drop there. Yeah.
So we run over, and I kind of just grab him by the shoulder and pull him back. I'm like, you're going to lose your legs, like you're standing back here by this prop. I mean, you wanted to knock the guy out, but immediately you could tell he was hammered.
Yeah.
And it was a guy and 2 girls. They were all hammered. I don't know what they were hammered on. It wasn't just alcohol. They were looped up.
Could have been Zima. I don't know how long ago this was,
Little Jolly Rancher in there.
Right.
So
Mike knows how to party.
So, of course, the first thing we say to him, like, what the hell was that? And he was like, whoa, dude, whoa. He kept saying. And I was like, what? You tried to run us over. And he said, man, I thought you guys were buoys. I said, buoys? Didn't you see the land right behind us? Like, even if you thought we were buoys, you're going to go right into the land,
So did you have your headlamps on?
I did not. You know what? We took his truck, and I did not have my lamp. You know what happens when you switch cars to go on a fishing trip? And
it's a bad deal. That's always a bad deal. You're like, I'm just going to jump in with my boy, and then halfway there, you're like, here's 10 reasons why I shouldn't have done that. Yeah,
yep.
Okay.
Did not have a headlamp. Didn't have cell phones back then.
But then all he saw was silhouettes. So it wasn't like you were both standing there with headlamps on.
No, we were yelling, running. Yeah, but we were splashing. I mean, we were doing everything we can. Yeah, and terrified. And yeah, man, we just left him. It's funny because I think we had cell phones, but it wasn't like he had an iPhone. I think I left my phone in the car. Yeah. So it wasn't like I was gonna go call anybody. We just were like, oh, that's fishing Jersey for you.
So what was the outcome, man? I mean, did the cops end up there, or what happened to the guy?
We just left him. We left him on the beach, which is
that's very Jersey. That part right there.
I told this guy, Mike, I'm like,
this guy, I'm out. Before. Yeah, it's his problem. It's his problem, Mike. Yeah,
he almost killed us. I mean, we probably should have called somebody. But if you had your iPhone back then, you would have just picked it right out of your pocket and called. But it was a long. By the time you walk the however long it took to get back to the truck and get your stuff off, you just kind of think about how crazy it was. By then,
well, yeah, back
moved
then,
on.
dude, if you were to carry your cell phone, it would have been like an extra 5 pounds in your surf bag, like the Nokia brick days.
Yeah, you would sneeze and it would get waterlogged, you know?
Well, I would bet that one might have made at least a small blurb in the paper the next morning because there was a strong chance he was still there when the sun came up.
Yeah, seriously. I should have went back for the next tide.
I've never had anything that close call before, although I have had boats coming dead at me while I was on a jetty. You know what I'm saying? Shark River jetty and things like that. And you're like, your gut is always like, no, he's not. He's going to turn. This is not going to happen. And then just wham, bow right up on the rocks.
Whammo.
But I was never in a position where I was like, he might run me over.
Yeah.
So that one's pretty pucker worthy.
If I didn't turn around that last second, man, he would have definitely hit one of us. That's for sure. Not both of us.
You know, Joe, there are so many things wrong with that deal.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like one of those things, like, I didn't know what the officer was going to give me a ticket for, but I knew I was going to get one. Like, drinking just causes a lot of bad things. Like, I like to have a good time, right? But,
So
like,
do I.
I don't drink. I don't drink in the boat. Like, that's a bad deal. They are probably out in the sun too much, and it hits you hard. They're like, oh, it's one beer, and then wink, wink, sprinkle, sprinkle.
I'll tell you, man, you know, they say drinking and fishing go hand in hand. Like, it's kind of like the old thing, like go, drinking with a beer. I don't know if I've ever said this on this show before, and maybe some people will, I don't know, think less of me. Like, drinking and fishing never go hand in hand for me. Like, when I'm out fishing, I'm there to fish. If I want to get drunk, I'll stay home on the porch with a cooler and get drunk. Like, maybe a cold beer on the way in from a long ride offshore, but otherwise, like, that's just not, it just never goes hand in hand. Boating or fishing and drinking.
It's a bad deal. I've seen an awful lot of guide trips ruined because the guys went out the night before instead of the night after. It's like, dude, we aren't going to be out here until midnight. Like,
yeah, you can go to the bar later. Exactly. Anyway, if that story made you at all nervous, remember, you weren't nearly as nervous as Hayden Samick is right now because he's about to square off with me in Fish News. Fish News!
That escalated quickly.
Couple things before we get started. I got to give a shout out to listener Kyle Purnell, who won the complete set of Bent-themed dubbing we were giving away. I had asked you guys to show us something homemade on Instagram using those Bent Podcast and Degenerate Angler hashtags, and we had a strong showing of all kinds of homemade stuff. We had a NASCAR theme lure, I think, or maybe it was like a Days of Thunder theme lure. I don't really remember. Are you a Days of Thunder fan?
I don't know what that is, Joe.
Oh, your homework for this weekend is to watch Days of Thunder and report back. Anyway, we had some rod holders, some spearing decoys, and a lot of flies. But Kyle repurposed tiny foam carrots from his kids' craft supply and used them as foam bodies for sort of like Mr. Wiggly style flies. And the dad and me loved that, as did the fly tire, because they were just too perfect, right? I don't know if you saw those. I assume you did. Like, they were the perfect size and perfect shape, and they came in a ton of different colors. And his son had already stuck like the foam dinosaurs and sharks and shit all over. But that kid doesn't want the carrots. He doesn't want the carrots. So that was a win. Like, what a frugal thing to do, you know?
I saw those and I was like, they should sell those at fly shops.
If you packaged that carrot up and it was like by hairline dubbing in a fly shop, people would pay $8 a pack for them. Yeah.
For sure. It looked great. It looked like that was the intended purpose of that.
Yes.
A lot of my buddies are having kids and never have time to fish anymore. But I guess every now and then a kid is actually beneficial to your fishing.
Rarely, but sometimes.
Rarely. But I mean, the other day you were talking about how dragon tails were kind of born out of a shitty toy.
That's true. Orvis Dragon Tails, yeah, they were a crappy toy called a squirmel that like you'd throw in a gift bag at a little kiddie birthday party at the bowling alley. Terrible toy, but Dave Mangum, figured out that they make great tarpon flies. So yeah, for sure. But I have to give one more shout out to listener Tim Rogers. He sent us pictures of his little girl, and what Tim does is he'll tie a clouser, if you can picture this, and other streamers on bobby pins instead of hooks. He'll put a bobby pin right in the vise so that she can wear them in her hair. But if you don't know that that's what Tim has done, it just looks like someone's false cast went way wrong. And this poor little child has a clouser just planted like in her tiny skull. And it's hysterical. But I love the idea so much. I'm doing this with my daughter. Like, she is about some fly tying, and we'll eat this up. And we actually debated hard between Tim's photo and Kyle's and decided that while cute, the hair clips just aren't technically helping you catch fish. You know what I mean? But I did send Tim some stickers for the honorable mention.
Well, that is some hardcore girl dad shit, and that I love that, man. Stuff like that just makes me happy. There's something about that I just love.
Yeah, I posted the pictures this week on Instagram. It's super cute, super funny. But anyway, last thing, we'll try and do this quickly before we get in the news, but I feel like we have to. A lot of you guys reached out regarding the trot line story from last week. But if there was a theme to a lot of those messages, it was this. The part of the Nolichucky River in Tennessee in question where the trot liners were set up, you guys are telling me is far better known for its whitewater rafting, smallmouth fishing, and musky fishing. Like, it's shallow, fast water, and multiple people told me it's kind of shitty for catfish. You know what I mean? Like, everyone I heard from was pretty much on the side of the kayakers for cutting the line. And while the trot line dudes still weren't doing anything wrong or illegal, it's not like they couldn't do this in that place. Everybody seems to agree it was pretty poor form where they set up, where they did it. And people are like, I don't even know, are there even catfish in that part of the river? Or are there enough to even load up a trot line? So slightly shady, but that was sort of the feedback I got, you know?
Yeah, man, it kind of seems more and more like this trot line might have been set up to like prove a point or something. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of over this story, but I hope folks... I hope folks just like look at this as a model of what not to do to like stand up for your fishing rights.
Sure.
You know, we're all out here. And at the end of the day, we're recreating too, right? Mm-hmm. So we're all out here, and the more us fishermen do to respect the folks using the river for their own forms of recreation, the more likely we are to get that same respect back. You know, and that's important. Unless they're tubing with Bluetooth speakers. I hate that. You should slash those tubes.
Dude, you know how many free Bluetooth waterproof speakers I've gotten from companies over the years? And I just like, thanks, and like send it to Goodwill. Like, I don't use them for anything ever. I never use them. Anyway, let's move along. We're getting long-winded here. Remember, this is a competition. Hayden and I do not know which juicy news story the other guy has grabbed, though I must say, now that we're only hitting 2 stories, the game of chess has gotten a little tougher. And who leads off matters, because if you're not leading, which I'm not this week, you have to pick your story based on the one you do not think the other guy is going to grab, especially on a week like this, with several dandies to choose from. But as always, our beloved audio engineer, Phil, will examine both of our dandies and declare a news winner. Floor.
Did you just say Phil was going to examine our dandies, man?
Oh, man, what you got?
So the dandy that I will be offering up for Phil's examination is...
Please.
So this week in fish news, Kansas has a new state record alligator gar, I guess. Danny Lee Butch Smith II. He was fishing for catfish on the Neosho River when he caught something very unexpected. So unexpected, in fact, that he couldn't immediately identify what he had in the bottom of his boat. So to that end, Butch gets to posting his catch on a Facebook catfishing group called Whisker Seekers, which might be my favorite detail of this whole story. But while the consensus was, it just makes me happy to know that there is a Facebook group out there called Whisker Seekers revolving around catfish.
Yeah, I also think Danny Lee Butch Smith was the guitarist in the Marshall Tucker Band for a time, like 76, 77. But I could be wrong off
just for the tour. Yeah. While the consensus was that Butch had obviously landed some sort of gar, the exact species was the subject of a spirited debate. So old Butch takes it to the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, and the biologists are pretty much stunned. It appeared to be an alligator gar.
Yeah.
The fish came in at about 4.5 foot long and 40-ish pounds, and as far as alligator gar go, this one wasn't huge.
Right. By Texas standards, that's like you're not even on the board.
Yeah,
it's still a big fish.
Yes. They can get to over 8 foot long and weigh like a couple 100 pounds, but it was huge for Kansas. In fact, any alligator gar is huge for Kansas because alligator gar aren't supposed to live in Kansas at all.
Right.
According to a press release from the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, there has never been another report of an alligator gar being caught in Kansas history. So, yeah, seeing an alligator gar in Kansas is about as surprising as seeing an actual alligator.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, so I looked at this one, and I was worried you were going to grab it, and I was right. Their range used to be so much broader than where they are now that initially I just assumed that they had been in Kansas and just hadn't seen one there in a very long time.
Yeah.
I learned something. I did not realize they were never native to Kansas. Didn't know that.
Never native to Kansas. So this all begs the question, how did the gar get into the Neosho River in the first place? One theory is that it was part of some sort of formal reintroduction effort, as a lot of these kind of historic fish tend to be, right? Like alligator gar.
Yeah.
You hear a lot of people reference them as living fossils, right? Over 100 million years old and native to all sorts of waterways. And just really an interesting fish and worth reintroducing to their native range. But upon further inspection, Butch's gar wasn't tagged. There weren't any identifying markers that you would expect to find should it have been part of a formal reintroduction effort. So, so that eliminated that theory. Another theory was that this was either a case of bucket biology or someone dumping a pet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when the local Fox News station wrote this up, they got a hold of the KDWP Fisheries Division Director, Doug Nygren. Nygren? Does that look right to you?
Slippy? Slappy? Samsonite? 2 in a row.
Nice. Who said, it's not unlikely that this fish was once somebody's pet or purchased from a pet store and simply released into the river once it became too large. Now, I'm not sure how much I believe that. Just for the simple fact that I have no idea where the hell, what the hell kind of pet shop sells an alligator gar.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't, I'm not the expert on that either. I've seen a lot of gar in tanks in a lot of places. Chinese restaurant down the street has gar in tanks. Kids love it, but they're certainly not gator gar.
No.
So yeah, I'd say the same thing. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but I've certainly never seen it. I've never known them as being part of the aquarium trade. It's always much smaller gar species.
Yeah, but I mean, then again, I do remember a pet shop back home in Pennsylvania that used to sell actual alligators when I was a kid. So, I guess anything's possible.
Now that you mentioned it, there was one in Jenkintown, PA. You could get any kind of turtle you wanted, even though you weren't supposed to have any turtles. They were just there. What do you want? You get them in a little Chinese food to-go container.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, not outside the realm of possibility, but I agree, it's not a common aquarium fish.
Yeah. Now, the last kind of theory, they're not excluding the idea that the gar somehow naturally found its way into the Neosho. It wouldn't be that far-fetched, being that there are some alligator gar in neighboring states like Illinois, except for the fact that this gar would have had to overcome a series of dams that would make a steelhead blush and other obstacles to get to where this fish was eventually caught by Butch.
That's what I was wondering too. I don't really know anything about the Neosho. I didn't really look that deep into it, but that was the first thing that came to my mind is, does it connect? Is there a way? Does it ultimately connect somewhere, to known gar water?
Yeah, I mean, gar tend to thrive in fairly oxygen poor environments. That doesn't really bother them, right?
Right.
So it wouldn't have surprised me if perhaps there had been a neighboring system that might have had some gar, and with some flooding, it came over on a floodplain or something like that, or It seemed like perhaps there was a way, but looking into it, it just does not seem as if that's really a plausible idea. They're kind of just not ruling it out until they do the research on it.
Yeah, and especially if all those dams didn't have fish ladders, which it's questionable how well they work anyway, right? Yeah. But if they don't all have one, then I don't know. But it's fascinating nonetheless.
Right. So the way that they, now it kind of comes to the question of how they're going to identify the origins of this fish. So I'm going to read a little bit from the press release here just because they summed it up more succinctly than I'd yammer about it. But to quote the press release, they said that because most populations of this species can be distinguished from one another with a sample of the fish's fins, another option we're there considering is genetic identification, said KDWP Assistant Director of Fisheries Research, Jeff Koch. This will tell us if the fish came from an existing population in another state. If genetic testing doesn't pan out, not all hope is lost. KDWP fisheries biologists would still have one more option. Microchemistry is another technique at our disposal, Koch added. Microchemistry is performed by measuring the elemental proportion of a bone on a given fish and comparing it to the elemental concentration of surrounding water. If consistencies exist, the data may be able to help fisheries biologists determine at least how long the fish had been in the Neosho River. So that's from their press release. For my money, I'm going to guess that the gar was caught like somewhere else, like relatively, proximal to the Neosho, and got dumped in the river once some dude and his buddies were done messing around with it. Those, like I said earlier, those fish are real tough, and it wouldn't surprise me at all to find out one survived a ride in a pickup bed and made a home wherever it got dumped.
Sure. I mean, that's very plausible. Like you said, I've caught them down in Texas, some giants, and short of putting an arrow through them or a spear or something, right? They're like almost impossible to kill. Like they can breathe out of water for a time. I think as long as they're kept wet, they can live in very little water. And the guides I used to fish with down there would be like, it wasn't uncommon. Because people would limb line for catfish and inadvertently catch them.
Yeah.
He's like, we'd catch them when you could tell their head was like beaten in with a bat, and like somebody took some chops at their head with an axe, and they were doing just fine. So one of the toughest fish on the planet.
Yeah, those are awfully hardy fish. Anyway, so what became of the alligator gar?
It's the best part.
I do like this. Well, if you've seen the pictures, it's obvious it was not released. Biologists took out the otolith for ID, and Butch was allowed to keep the carcass, which it sounds like he plans to have beetle cleaned and put in a display case.
I watched the news clip, like the news report. I love Butch. I want to hang out with Butch. But Butch is like super backwoods. Like he spent most of the interview shirtless, which is fine, but it's like, dude, you're on the news right now. Like, but he just did not care. And they kept panning as he's talking about the garhead. They kept just panning to it, like zooming in for a tight shot. And dude, it's just covered in flies. And it's just like, yeah, it's got a pretty cool skull. I'm going to do the thing. And it's just like rotting away. There's like flies just consuming the eyeballs of the fish.
It's obvious that it had been sitting on the dock for a little bit. And I would be surprised if that ends up getting traditionally beetle cleaned. I think it might just I think the birds might
sun
do the
bleached.
job. Yeah.
Either way, I would love to think that this story sort of pointed to maybe some expansion of gator gar range. But my money is that science is gonna link it to a relatively close population. I think it's a total fluke. Like you said, somehow, some way, we may never know, but it ended up there completely by accident. Because you got to remember too, man, these things gulp air, right? Like that's just a natural function. So if Butch is fishing this water all the time for many, many years, which it says he had, if there's more gar in there, they're going to give themselves away at a certain point.
Sure.
One can hide, but if there's a bunch of gar in this piece of river, somebody, even if it wasn't him, at some point would have been like, what the hell was that? Or what is over there breathing? Or what just boiled away from a distance and made this huge push of water? So I'm guessing it's a one-off, but we shall see.
Yeah, I would think so. I think if there's one thing I do know, it's that we ought to have Butch on for a smooth move sometime.
I think so. He's probably got a smooth moves about trying to clean
got a couple too.
That gar skull. You know what I mean? Probably ruined a perfectly good Dutch oven or something on the back fire trying to boil all the skin off or something. Nice. Who knows?
After 3 years of work, our follow-up to the Meat Eater Fish and Game Cookbook is here. It's the Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, campfire, and camp stove. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside. From grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Get your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com or buy it wherever books are sold.
That's one rare fish. We know its fate. I'm going to move into another rare fish with a different fate, yet still mildly grisly to a degree. Several people sent this story along, as I knew they would as soon as I heard it on talk radio during a recent early morning drive. And way back, this is going back months, we covered a story on Fish News about a woman making soup out of her pet koi fish, right? This kicks the eating your pet story up a notch, okay? So this one, it's all over the place. Story's all over, but I'm going to pull from Newsweek here. And this all centers around a viral TikTok video, and I'm going to mess this up. This is going to be my slippy, slappy Samsonite.
Nice.
A viral TikTok video posted by @Mia Coriawan 01. Okay, I'm not going to say it again for the rest of the time. So that was the one off. Okay, and in this video, we see her scaling, cleaning, and deep frying an arowana. Now, if you're not familiar with these fish, they look sort of like a tarpon with big, round, silver dollar scales. They got a big old mouth that can suck in a lot of air and water. But the tail tapers almost to a point, real small tail. Most commonly, you'll see pictures of arowana from South America. In fact, I've caught them down there, not any particularly large ones, but I've caught a few down there. Mm-hmm. And they also inhabit certain waterways in South Florida, which, as we all know, are just dumping grounds for exotic, non-native species.
What doesn't inhabit a waterway in South Florida?
Not much anymore. And if you can dream it, you can find it down there if you fish long enough. Some of you, I'm sure, have also seen them in aquariums, perhaps in the token Amazon rainforest exhibit. They're the staple there, and in pet stores, right? So unlike those gator gar, very common to see arowana in pet stores. The little ones are tank favorites. Now, the arowana in question, though, is not the common South American variety, but the rare Asian arowana. Ooh. And according to Newsweek, they are the most expensive aquarium fish on the planet. Now, I have not researched that in full. I guess I'll take their word for it. I would have thought that there are rare saltwater species that would fetch higher prices, but I guess not. Newsweek says that these arowana cost hundreds to tens of thousands of dollars, and it's rumored that one was once sold to a high-ranking Chinese Communist Party official for $300,000. Yeah, I mean, that's like, 300 large, 300K. That's a lot for any fish. But here's the crazy thing. It's not like some fish trapper or whatever has to like hang glide into a remote canyon surrounded by like lava flows to procure them. They farm the damn things, right? They farm these arowana. Furthermore, it says that these farms, quote, are like high security prisons with concrete walls protected by guard dogs, watchtowers, and barbed wire. All right. But wait, because shit gets nuttier. It gets nuttier still. According to the story, buyers can then spend extra money to have cosmetic surgery done on their fish, including chin lifts and eye lifts to enhance their beauty.
I'm speechless, Joe.
So I mean, in these things, they look just like a regular arowana, except that their scales, they have like this really brilliant kind of burnt look, like bright burnt orange. So they're very pretty fish.
Yeah. I had actually debated picking this story up for my fish news segment. And so I did some research into these fish, and I was reading about how there are like base colored ones, right? There's, you have the red, the silver, and then you could have like designer colors, like fire lily purple, or
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I thought they were all orange.
No, it's like there are not only like your standard red, orange, yellow, silver. There are like nuanced colors that these collectors like really go after, and those are like the ones that catch these like command these super high prices, like Chairman's 300,000.
Right. So it's like, do you want the Toyota Corolla with the roll up windows in white, or exactly?
Do you want the Ferrari red? Yeah,
that makes total sense. That makes total sense. I still think it's ridiculous, but So there you go, designer with chin lifts. Anyway, these Asian arowana are so popular because they are believed to bring their owners prosperity and good fortune. So, was this TikTok user's pet arowana like a dud? A lemon, perhaps, that she bought at Pete's Discount secondhand arowanas or us that brought zero prosperity? Is that why it took its final swim in peanut oil? No. Her husband refused to clean the tank. The tank in the home looked like shit. So she was like, okay, watch what happens now.
That's brutal.
And she cooked the dude's fish, right? So that's how the story is circulating, that this was like straight revenge. And it's much funnier that way. It's much funnier to be like, oh, you're not going to clean the tank? Then I'm going to cook that sumbitch. But, okay, if you read the fine print, which nobody really is on this story, because this was not in the radio news report, I heard nothing. It's like they just like slipped this in there hoping you won't notice. But what she said is she actually did clean the tank because she just couldn't take it anymore. She was tired of asking and just took matters into her own hands. But the fish got sick afterwards and died. And she said, quote, I thought it would be delicious. And I got to say, I believe that story because if you let a fish tank just sort of rot away, right, for too long, the fish can sometimes like adapt to the terrible pH level and whatnot. And if you just drastically go from borderline toxic to uber clean in a matter of 20 minutes, you can easily kill your fish that way. Like you can make it too clean. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you believe that. I do not believe that story.
You think it was straight vengeance?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, man. I'll tell you what. I've had fish tanks as a kid, and I've seen my fair share of dead fish clinging to the filter. And I'll tell you what, man. I don't think anybody's gonna eat that fish. You would have to be a pretty bold person to see a dead fish floating in a fish tank and decide to repurpose it in such a way as this.
Well, and that's very fair. And this could ultimately be a lie. Like she could be saying that to try and make herself not look quite so vicious. Yeah. I'll give you that. But I mean, I don't know. Let's just say you had a walleye in the tank. It was your pet walleye. I think there's a difference between the fish dying and going belly up and like looking all white and like starting to fall apart in there as you're describing. I think you'd be nuts to eat that. But like if you put it back in the tank and 20 minutes later it was just like clearly dead but fresh, would you eat it then?
No. And here's how I know I wouldn't. I have been like fishing on lakes and had an almost dead walleye. Right. Spot. You kind of see some. You're like, oh, is that a duck? What is that? You see it thrashing around.
You see a fish like kicking around. Yeah.
You go over to it, and it was like a nice, perfect eater-sized walleye. And I'm not one to turn my nose at an eater-sized walleye.
Sure.
But if I was not directly responsible for that thing going from here to beyond the mortal coil, I'm not going to eat that fish. So again, I think she's lying.
That's fair, and that's a great debate point. Listeners, write in. If you found that walleye, we've all seen that, where you just see a fish like kicking around, struggling for life on the surface, right? Do you take it or do you let it go? I tend to be on your side in a lake.
I will pick up a deer that I saw get hit by a car.
Really? So, you saw how it died. Fair enough. Anyway, The fried arowana, to me, looked much tastier than the koi soup. And I had fish tanks for years too, right? And here's a tip. If you're considering one, put it in a high traffic area or don't get one. Because I've found that if you squirrel a tank away, like in your finished basement or the spare bedroom or whatever, stronger chance it's going to go to hell. Like my kids are begging for a new tank now, and I would love to provide that, but we just don't have room in an area of the home that's high enough traffic that I will keep up with a solid cleaning regimen. It has to be someplace where it will bother you and be an eyesore if it turns to shit, or it turns into algae soup. Or else it's very easy to just like, I'll do it a couple days from now. I'll do it next week. So part of me doesn't blame this woman because there's nothing worse than staring at 60 gallons of brown algae in a clogged filter, like, while you're trying to watch Below Deck Mediterranean.
I do love that show.
It's still harsh, though.
I know we're almost out of time, but there is one thing worse than a fish tank going to shit with algae, and that's a fish tank that actively tries to kill you and your entire family. Do you got time for a story real quick, Joe?
Yes. You can't say that and then not tell us what's up.
When I was a kid, my brother got to looking at the Sharper Image catalog, and
that's funny.
And in this Sharper Image catalog, there was this globular fish tank.
Okay.
And it was like this huge. It was pretty cool. It was like this huge orb that was on a pedestal, and any kid would want this. So my parents.
I vaguely remember it. It was right next to like the massage chair and like the slippers.
Well,
that,
as is everything in a Sharper Image catalog. So anyway, my parents broke down one Christmas and got him this fish tank, and all was well and good. It stayed in his bedroom right by his window, and we'd go in there, we'd play with the fish. It was a cool fish tank. And one day I come home from school, and I'm sitting there with my mother, and there's like, all of a sudden we kind of smell something burning. And we start running around the house trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And the top floor of our house is just all full of smoke.
Oh, God.
And I open the door to my little brother's room, and his bed is on fire. What had happened? Yeah. What had happened was, as the sun started to move differently in the sky as the season progressed, it came through the window. And just one day after months of this fish tank being there, it had just reached the tipping point where it had been going through that tank in such a concentrated way for such an amount of time that it had focused a beam onto his mattress and lit his bed on fire.
That's frightening.
Yeah.
That is not what I expected you. I was waiting for like a short in the filter or something.
Nope.
That's frightening, dude.
Nope. And I'm pretty sure that's why you don't see those fish tanks anymore.
Because the Samick family sued the shit out of the Sharper Image.
No, we did not. The fire department came, and they marched right up to my little brother's room, took the fish tank and dumped it on the fire and left.
They didn't even use water from their own tank. They just dumped your fish out on the blaze. Yep. Oh my God. That is terrific. Oh man, that was really good. That was very surprising. I love that. But anyway, Phil, we have to move on to Phil here. Phil's got to focus his beams on one of these two stories and decide who is going to take it this week.
When we are done, we're going to hear another story of a different fish that brings good luck and prosperity from our man River Horse. He's going to help you chill out and relax with a little sagely wisdom. Sports fans, this one is for you. And he is actually talking about a real carp buried in the dirt.
Microchemistry is another technique at our disposal. Oh, me, dude. I'm sucking today. Coke or Koch, you think?
I'm going to say it's Koch.
Microchemistry is another technique at our disposal. Dude, I've been chasing roosters too much, man. I got like on the mind.
Phil, leave that in?
No, please do not leave that in. Microchemistry is another tech... Oh,
Joe, you're the winner.
It's important to have some things in life that you feel bring the mojo. Our story today reminds me of a time when River Horse went fishing with his good old Texas buddy, JT Van Zandt. JT is a beautiful soul and one of those people I hold sacred in my life. On this day, I stepped on his raft holding a triple espresso and a giant banana. JT howled at the moon, "Don't you dare get on that boat, River Horse." But it was too late. He said, "Oh, shit." I hopped in the front of the raft with a badass 6-weight, and by the time we'd gone around the first bend in the river, stuck a 4-pound bass on topwater. JT looked at me with a big old grin and said, "We're gonna need some more bananas." Sometimes the things you believe in come true. Other times, maybe you want to take a look at the big picture. And now, on to our story, Lucky Streak. The carp was a few inches under my left foot since I was pitching from the stretch. 2 out with a rowdy hot dog-fueled home crowd, runners on both corners, and us leading 7-6. Shit, shit, shit. If there was any mojo in that carp, I'd need it. Their catcher was at the plate. He had a razor blade earring, was about 280 pounds of thundering lard, and wore a showstopper mullet that reached past the numbers on the back of his jersey. I had called off the breaking ball twice, and Coach called timeout, looking pissed as could be as he stalked to the mound. "What the hell is the problem, gentlemen?" asked Coach. "Coach, I think a curveball is not really the answer here," I shared. "Look at me," said Coach. "When I call for a curveball, I expect you to shut up and throw a curveball. Do you understand? So throw it, and if he hits that pitch, your ass is mine on a silver platter." There's nothing like the crack of the bat, is there? That sound when you really connect and your shoulders and hips just flat out drive the thing. That moment when all of us crane our necks to the sky in symphonic unison to see the damage done. I stood on the carp and watched as our center fielder made an on-the-fly catch at the fence. My tailbone would live for another day. Thank you, carp. As for Coach, I let all the air out of his front tires at midnight. I was on the way to catch a few more carp for the outfield. And that's our sagely wisdom story for today. What's that, you ask? My baseball career? Well, I did get a signed Christmas card from Lasorda and all the Dodgers, but instead I opted to go to a Division I school and play water polo. And that turned out just fine. We even beat Notre Dame in the Midwest Championships, 13-12 in overtime. My rule is always choose things in the water over land. I hope all of you are feeling lucky after that. And just know, I believe in you. I will see you out there along the path, my brothers and sisters.
It's funny to me that old River Horse brought up how carp are considered lucky, because on that last episode of Das Boat Northeast, you got lucky with a carp. Remember this? And sadly, this did not make the final cut, but there is photographic evidence. I just have to add, it was also swiftly beaten by an Omen Black baitcaster in Concept A3 baitcaster from our beloved sponsors 13 Fishing. Just saying their bass gear hurts a lot more than bass. Das Boat proved that with stripers and cobia and catfish, and Ross's lucky carp.
Was it lucky, Joe?
I thought it was terrific. I was very sad that it didn't make the final episode. We had those pile of catfish there, and then right there in the middle of it, there's Ross with a giant goldfish.
Yeah, that was entertaining. Me just being there was entertainment for you.
Yeah. Well, and fun fact, by the way, the carp in question ate one of the cherry garlic hot dogs we were soaking for Channel Cats in the second half of that show. So carp guys, keep that secret in your back pocket. But I gotta say, man, taking you out for Channel Cats was so much fun for me because when you're in the walleye zone, like when you're doing your thing, man, you are laser focused and dialed. But take you out for catfish, and I found it slightly awkward.
Yeah, Joe, you could probably remove slightly from that statement and we'd be more accurate.
I remember you saying, it was like, I'm holding this catfish like a loaf of bread. Like you were like two-hand holding it like Wonder Bread straight up and down. It would have made a great photo for our awkward moments in angling segment, which we're about to end the show with today. But I got to tell you, now I'm nervous because you have a knack. You're very good at like messing with people and shredding some people. And I warn the listeners, right, that some of my guest hosts may not be as empathetic as Miles when it came to awkward moments in angling. But we're going to give it a shot. Are you excited?
I feel like I'm being kind of set up a little bit, to be honest.
Why don't you take a picture? It'll last longer.
So I've said this before, but it never ceases to amaze me how willing people are to get shredded. And we get so many awkward photo submissions from people just dying to get torn up. And most of the time I'm kind of like, there's not that much to shred there. But I got a photo from Caden Kimberlin. And instantly I was like, I feel kind of bad, but this is what the guy wants. You know what I mean? Like he wants this. He's asking for this.
Do you want me to tell you on this one? You shouldn't feel bad, and I'm going to tell you why in a minute. And I'm not going to go where you think I'm going to go with this. I'm going to bring up a little old school thing. Me and you did a smallmouth show together a long time ago, and we caught some giants, right?
Yes.
And me and you are each holding up. Dude, don't press me with this, but we had fish in the 6 to pushing 7 pound range. We're each holding one up. We get a picture with it.
Yes.
You use that as a lead in for something, and then people put a picture below, which I don't understand. And they're like, "You like that? How about this, boys?" And it's like a 17-inch smallmouth. And I'm like, I don't understand sometimes people's like, dude, this is 7 pound smallmouth. You're holding up a 2.5 pounder. Like, what?
Okay.
I feel like in this picture, if I can just jump right into this.
No, you can't jump right into it because I'm going to say more about it first because I want to set this up a little more. But as predicted, you are going full bore, which I knew you would, and I think it's going to be good. Right? I think it's going to be good, or at least for us, maybe not for Caden. But I got to add part of the reason I feel so bad. Caden's a youngster. I'm going to say late teens, maybe 20. Caden, if you're older than that, good for you because you don't look a day over 14. But Caden recently got into fly fishing. And to do so, he picked up, as he put it, he pointed out, a Walmart special combo, which is impressive because there are no fly combos in the Walmarts where I live. I haven't seen one in years. Now, I have to point out that the fact alone that this is a fly photo
Somebody
also,
probably just left that there.
Right.
They didn't actually buy it. It was just in the dumpster inside the Walmart by the Slurpee machine.
As I was about to say, you're probably also rolling your eyes because I know you hate everything about fly fishing.
Not everything, just the whole premise.
Okay. Oh God. All right. So this so this is a pretty tight shot. All right. I'm just gonna keep going here because you're that's why we love you. Pretty tight shot, just waist up on Caden, and in his left hand he's holding a smallmouth bass by the lip vertically. And you just brought up, the guy with the 17-incher. I would call it maybe a pound and a half. Legitimately, what do you think it is?
Probably 14 inches. I mean, look at the size of his hand. Unless Screech here's got bigger mitts than I think he does.
Jeez. Great. How did I know this is going to be like your favorite part of the whole show? All right, so in his right hand, so he's got the smallie vertical in his left. In his right hand, he's holding his Walmart special fly rod horizontally. And the fish in the rod create like a perfectly symmetrical L shape in front of them. And we've joked in this segment before about how people feel the need to get a fly rod in the shot so everyone knows that it was caught on the fly. But Caden made no attempt to make this look natural. In fact, the rod is being held in such a way, with reverence, I would say, that he seems almost as proud of the rod as the fish.
Yeah, I mean, it's better, though, than the dude that, puts it around his neck.
You think so?
Yeah, I kind of do that because maybe it's because I'm so anti-fly guy. But
well, whoever the first guy was that thought of that was pretty damn smart. The problem is that everybody does it now, and that's just another way of trying to make the fly rod look natural.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I feel like Caden, who I'm going to refer to as Screech from here on out. I feel like Screech is like the kid that like got pushed in the locker, and he did it on purpose because he liked it. Like that's the look I got here. You know what I mean?
Okay. All right. So I'll say this: I can look past the rod and the fish display. The thing I cannot look past on Caden, I will respectfully keep calling him Caden. The thing I cannot look past is Caden's shirt. Now, it's a button-down fishing shirt, which is fine. I'm a big fan of those myself. But the best way I can describe the print on this shirt is wallpaper from a Vegas motel, like off the strip, circa 1976. That's what it looks like from a distance. But if you zoom in, then you'll realize the pattern is like a mashup of reeds and ducks on ponds and these bright oranges and subtle purples. And you're like, okay, I meant to say shitty fishing motel on Lake Vermilion circa 1978. Like I was just off slightly, you know?
What I saw when first glance, because that's what you got to do in these. Like, what do you see right out of the gate? I see he was at that same Walmart, and right next to the Slurpee machine where he got that rod out of the dumpster, there was a Hawaiian shirt sale for 99 cents, and then somebody hit him with a paintball gun a couple times. And then he had all of his Slayer and Megadeth shirts in the laundry. And so he's like, Mom, where's my freaking shirt, man?
Well, that may be true, and I'm going to tell you why. Because Caden sent me multiple photos, right? So he gave me roast options. He's like, you could shred any one of these, right? They are all taken on different dates, but he is wearing this shirt in every single one. So clearly, this is dude's fishing shirt. This is the designated fishing shirt.
I mean, I can get behind that.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
And even the cheap rod thing, that doesn't, I mean, I'm fine with that. I think when he took that picture though, he's a goofy dude. Like he was looking for a little bit of entertainment out of this. Unlike the people who are serious. So I don't really have a problem with Screech, to be honest with you, because the guys that are like posting the 14 inchers, like, yeah, how about this, bro? And they're serious about it.
Oh, like, it's not him. He's genuinely happy. Like,
he's having fun with this.
He is. But I think we also have to talk about the expression on his face, because it is 100% an expression of over-the-top pure joy. It's just subsequently, he looks like one of those clowns at the carnival, like you shoot the water in their mouth until the balloon pops. I mean, like, that's the expression on his face.
I see a combination of a wax statue and a guy that got goosed by somebody that wasn't supposed to be goosing.
Oh my God! You're all going to get to see this on Instagram this week, so you can tell me, carnival clown or someone who just got goosed. Does Joe or Ross win that one? I don't know. But Caden, you asked for it, so you got it, and you got it from none other than the masterful shredder that is Captain Ross Robertson. But listen, man, despite us, we're having a little fun at your expense, which again, you wanted, right? I also know, because you told me that Smallie was the first good fish you stuck on a fly. So congrats on that. I mean that. And even as Ross suggested, dude, keep waving that Walmart special, man. Don't let anyone tell you need anything better to get it done on the water, because you don't. Maybe just find a plain shirt and a nice salmon or azul pattern or something. Hey, if you got a photo of you or your buddy that you want to roast, okay, keep them coming to bent@themeateater.com. Maybe they will just end up here, and maybe I will bring Ross back especially to extra heavy shred your photo.
I feel like I could have a job opening here.
That is all the time we have for this week. If you're trying to gauge whether or not you're too close to the angler next to you, remember, you are if you can see the pattern on his wallpaper shirt, smell the Zima on his breath while he's standing next to his spinning prop, or if you can count the scales on the carp he's burying for good luck. However, if Ross Robertson rolls up too close to you in his boat, you should probably just leave, because that's the big dog.
That's solid advice, because I have big friends like Big Head.
You got all kinds of muscle. Knuckles, get the handbag. Ross needs to get rid of this guy. Oh, man. But this has been a lot of fun. It always is with you. I appreciate you being here, man. And if you haven't seen episode 6 of Das Boat Northeast, go watch that sumbitch because it's a good one. If you don't have a Degenerate Angler sticker on your bank bucket, keep using those Degenerate Angler and Bent Podcast hashtags on the Instagram. If I repost something you tag, you get stickered. If I use a voice memo on the show, you get mega swagged. So keep those along with sale bin items, bar nominations, and awkward photos coming to bent@themeateater.com. And finally, if you're trying to pick the perfect shade for that ginger merkin you're ordering, Ross can help.
After 3 years of work, our follow-up to the Meat Eater Fish and Game Cookbook is here. It's the Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, campfire, and camp stove. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside. From grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Get your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com or buy it wherever books are sold.